Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking Marvel and Netflix's Luke Cage. Just a quick note, if you're one of my regular viewers, I have finally found a way to sort of improve the video quality, um, but as you can obviously tell, I'm still working out my audio issues, so I do apologize for that. Anyway, let's get right into this. So Luke Cage. Um, I'm going to say up front that there's going to be quite a few spoilers in this review. I'll talk about the series a little bit in general, but the majority of my review is going to be spoiler stuff. But I will give you a warning before I get into that. So this is, of course, the latest Netflix Marvel collaboration, picking up after the events of Jessica Jones, and technically after the events of Captain America: Civil War. Um, but again, it's mostly sort of focused on the Netflix stuff. And as the title says, this is all about Luke Cage, and I have to say this is really good. I mean, it definitely has some flaws, but that said, it's a it's a really good series. I think this is probably the story in which I've enjoyed Luke Cage the most that really comes to mind. I've read a fair bit of him in the comics, and I like Luke Cage as a character, but he's never somebody I've been like hugely wild about. I mean, he's a cool character, but he's not somebody I particularly would seek out. So this series, though, is very interesting that the day after it basically debuted, Saturday, debuted on Friday, September 30th, October 1st, there was a major outage at Netflix. And while major websites do occasionally have problems, a lot of people's perception is basically that Luke Cage crashed Netflix. And I know that's what I was trying to watch when Netflix was having its trouble, and I was ticked. And I wondered, well, gee, I kind of wondered jokingly, like, gee, I wonder if Luke Cage broke Netflix. And it's like, well, that really could be a possibility. A lot of people were checking it out. The series has gotten a lot of very, very positive buzz online, and in my opinion, while it does have its flaws, this positive buzz is well deserved. In fact, the only things that I can really say that people have been saying about the series that are negative is that the story does seem to wander a little bit, and you'll have some trouble finding a strong direction, particularly kind of in the middle, and I'll grant that that is a fair criticism. It does sort of seem like there are definitely moments where you're just kind of like, oh, okay, can we kind of move things along, or what's going on here? What's the big plan over here? What's the end game? The other one that I've seen is some people are complaining like, well, Luke Cage is not diverse because there are basically almost no white characters of significance. And the two characters who are white in the series of any significance, one is a bad guy and the other is at best morally ambiguous. This is an absurd criticism. I mean, are we really trying to think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe considers white people to be bad? No, have you not noticed how many of the characters in there are, white? Now, and I certainly don't think that Luke Cage is trying to say that white people are bad. Luke Cage is a series that is really, in many ways, very much about what's going on with black people here in America in 2016 and the problems and issues that they are facing. And not only that, the the whole issue of what it's like as in general to be a minority. This series is set in Harlem, so yeah, the majority of the characters are black. We also have two Hispanic characters of significance in the series, and this really sort of seems to be a very ridiculous viewpoint of what diversity means. This is what I like to call, like, people who are complaining about this seem to be like they're doing what I call the Star Trek, playing Star Trek Voyager with casting. And I know this is a bit of a dated reference. This is something that came up with literally back in the 90s. And if you're familiar with Star Trek Voyager, of course, you had the female captain, you have Native American first officer, you've got a half Hispanic, half Klingon lady, you've got an Asian fellow, you've got Tuvok, the black Vulcan, Super Friends joke, consider it made. And it's just sort of like, even back then when you were reading this, like, yes, it was, a good attempt to be a little bit more diverse in terms of what was going on with Star Trek, which was great. But it really did just kind of feel like they were going down a checklist and like, okay, Asian, Hispanic, Black, Native American, female. It's just like, seriously. And to me, while doubtlessly well-intentioned, things like that are extremely formulaic and don't really, in my mind, properly show real diversity. Diversity isn't about having X number of people of X number of race or religion or whatever minority category you want to go with. It can also be about giving people the chance to share their perspectives who are minorities. And this is really what's going on with Luke Cage. It's, as I understand it, like the writers, directors. I was reading an interview with like the main producer behind it, I guess, and he was just talking about terms of all the writers, directors, actors who are a part of this. And he basically said like this is probably like the blackest show ever made for American television. I would assume he's going to know the numbers better than I do. And if that's the case, then man, good on Luke Cage. This really is a story about, what it is in a lot of ways to be black in modern day America. But it's also a superhero story. And we do, I'm a white guy from the Midwest. Okay? I am the whitest white dude that ever whited. Okay? But I can still go along on this journey and enjoy what's happening. And, root for Luke Cage. And yes, there are references to music and writers and other people who I personally am not familiar with. And a lot of these references are not explained. And it's understandable, it's pretty easy to understand. These are probably black creators that, black people would probably be more familiar with than folks like me. And, okay, cool, good. It does show a little bit more about how there is this very big cultural divide, and how we as a society still have a lot of work to do on a lot of levels. But okay, I've been at this for almost 8 minutes. So let's really get into the meat and bones of what's going on with this. So, as a whole, I'm not really familiar with a good number of these characters that are in the series. Luke Cage I'm reasonably familiar with. Misty Knight, I consider myself reasonably familiar with her. But characters like Cottonmouth, Diamondback, Black Mariah, them I'm not particularly familiar with. I think I can vaguely recall, reading a comic with Diamondback in it. But when you say Diamondback, I generally tend to think of the female version of the character, who is this somewhat morally ambiguous character who was actually Captain America's girlfriend at one time. So that's the version of Diamondback that I'm familiar with. This particular version, not so much. But anyway, ultimately, Luke Cage is, while we saw a great deal of him and Jessica Jones, and he stepped up and he helped out and did some good there, it's really here that Luke takes his journey into becoming a real and proper superhero. Although a very different kind than what you see in the Avengers. Luke is the friendly neighborhood hero. And, seeing people react to him that way, it's great. It's even mentioned in the series. Here's a black dude that's bulletproof going out there and not being afraid to stand up for what's right. And that fellow I mentioned, the producer fellow, he mentioned that you're kind of going with the idea of just Luke's costume basically just being a hoodie was a very deliberate choice on their part because, well, wearing a hoodie has gotten more than one black guy shot in this country. Sadly. And Luke does have that very classic hero journey. He really does not want to be a part of this. He just wants to live his life and not have to deal with this. He's a very jaded and tired man for good reasons. That we saw some of in Jessica Jones, and it gets expanded on quite a bit in this series. But at the end of the day, Luke is a good guy, and he cares about others. He cares about Harlem. I mean, there's this great speech he gives about how Harlem is meant to be this light, this beacon of hope to the rest of the world. Towards the end of the series, it's really just beautiful. I don't know if it's a spoiler, so you know. And it's often said in Marvel Comics that New York City itself is a character that appears in the series, since most of the Marvel Comics are set in New York. And here that's the case with Harlem in particular being a character. A lot of the series was even naturally filmed there. And you really do get that sense that this is a unique and very special place that is simultaneously home to people of many different backgrounds, but also a place that holds a truly unique place in the history of Black folks in America, and that it means something truly, truly unique to those people. And that, of course, this uniqueness, this special place, should be protected from those who would seek to harm it. And a lot of the examination of this series is everybody wants what's best for Harlem. They just disagree about really what it is. Well, not really. Well, yeah, I guess even to some degree Diamondback does, but okay. But it's all a question of what is best for Harlem, and how do you go about it? Do you go about it, kind of like the vigilante way, like Luke Cage, or do you do it through the ruthlessness of power, like Cottonmouth and Mariah did? Anyway, I think that's enough. I think I've said all I can really without getting into spoilers too much. So let's just kind of hop right into it. So I'm going to give you the count to turn away from all spoilers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so let's just kind of do this real quick. What's going on with the characters in this episode, in this series? It's good, but it does have some meandering stuff. Like Cottonmouth, for instance. He's an interesting guy. I wish they'd expanded a little bit more on exactly why he's called Cottonmouth. I was never super clear on that. But he's this guy, he does genuinely believe that, what he's doing is good for Harlem. Him being the person in power. I'm going to make sure that Harlem stays the way it is, but it's going to be done on my terms. And anybody who doesn't toe my line is going to get stepped on. Despite as much as Cottonmouth's a guy who basically has ultimately embraced what his grandmother molded him into being. And I do like how they kind of give him those moments of depth, particularly that flashback scene when we see him when he's like 14 years old, and he's just seems to be a good-natured kid who probably has a real talent and a real future as a classical pianist. And then his grandmother forces him to murder his uncle, who was basically kind of the one person who really believed that he could be something other than just another gangster. And that's what really starts Cottonmouth down the road to embracing what it is his grandmother wanted him to become. Everybody wants to be the king. You get that great shot with him and the crown, and the Notorious B.I.G. poster. So, I mean, Cottonmouth is a bad guy, and he does a lot of bad stuff, but it is a little bit hard not to sympathize with him. He's another person who is a victim in some ways. That if there had been more opportunities, if there had been more hope, that he could be something better, that he could be something other than a criminal, he could have probably gone out and done something really extraordinary and beautiful with his talent. And I mean, that lack of hope and opportunities, that's unfortunately been the doom of more than a few talented young black guys. And in a way, it's basically kind of the same with Mariah. She goes out there and she's trying to do the same thing as Cottonmouth, just through the system. And ultimately, she becomes Mama Mabel herself. I mean, that's kind of her journey, is her ultimately embracing the whole being a crime boss thing. I mean, she like repeatedly tells herself when she like, particularly when she's like looking at that picture of Mama Mabel. It's like, I'm not you. It's like, yeah, I'm doing all this stuff that I know isn't exactly right, but I'm doing it for the greater good. I'm not doing this for myself. But ultimately, she falls. She becomes exactly like the person that she hates. And Mariah is interesting. I mean, she's ultimately the one that kills Cottonmouth, mostly because, I mean, it's heavily hinted that Uncle Pete, the one person who seemed to really care about Cornell and encouraged him to be something of a criminal, I mean, it's heavily implied that he sexually abused her when she was young. And Cornell makes the fatal mistake of implying that she wanted him to do that to her, which, yikes, dude. No wonder you got your head caved into the mic stand after that. So, I mean, right there also kind of shows you a little bit about the dynamics of Pete. On the one hand, he's encouraging of his nephew, wants to try and help him to go out and explore his talents, be the best he can be something other than a criminal, and yet he probably also sexually abused his niece. So, I think I've really said everything that I had to say about Luke as a character. But it is very satisfying with Luke when it comes to the point where we finally realize it's like, yeah, I can't run away anymore. I'm gonna deal with this. And this is a real thing after he gets hit with some pretty heavy stuff over the course of the series. His father-in-law, Pop, that's who Pop was, gets killed. He finds out that his wife was not exactly the person that he thought she was. We learn more about, discoveries that Diamondback is his half-brother, and of course, even worse, I mean, this is a guy who basically kind of grew up as close to him as a brother. Definitely love that bit in the flashback where we get to see him more or less in his classic 70s costume, and he just goes, "You look like a damn fool." And even by the standards of the 1970s, Luke Cage's original outfit was pretty out there. And, it's kind of been a thing in the comics where Cage is more than a little bit embarrassed by his original look. So let's see. What else do we have to talk about? Nothing really huge to say about Diamondback. I just wish there'd been a little bit more to him than I want to kill Luke Cage because my dad liked him better. I mean, they even sort of dodge the question. Is like, well, what happened to where's their father? Is he alive right now? Why doesn't Diamondback go after him for revenge? I mean, they just completely sidestep that. Although the ultimate fight between Luke and Diamondback at the end, that was some pretty sweet stuff. Misty Knight, very important character. It's one of those street level characters, particularly involved in things with like Heroes for Hire. Of course, in the comics, she's Iron Fist's longtime girlfriend. Although these days she's actually dating Falcon. But we'll see. I kind of have a feeling that they might not be going that road with her in Iron Fist, but it's a little too early to tell. But man, Misty Knight is really cool. I liked her a lot. In fact, I was actually saw one of my female friends on Facebook who really about Misty. I mean, like Misty. I mean, I just really just don't have work in it. Misty is just so damn. She's I mean, she's like most of the time she's the smartest person in the room. She has a really emotional journey of her own. And she finds out her partner, who used to be her mentor, has become corrupt, and she has to do all these politics. Diamondback gets the drop on her, and she almost dies. She almost bleeds to death in the basement there. I guess what was going on with her arm was probably meant to be a little bit of a nod to how in the comics Misty Knight actually lost an arm and had a cybernetic replacement. Don't think they're going to go there anytime soon, but you can kind of tell that they, or at least probably had that in the back of their minds. Also, we finally get a lot more of Candace. Oh no, Candace. Ugh. Okay, Claire. Claire. We get a lot more Claire, and I really do like what they do with her. It didn't work out between her and Matt Murdock, but she and Luke are a good mix. They bounce off each other well. Uh, ultimately, of course, in the comics, Luke Cage ended up married to Jessica Jones. Who knows what's going to happen there? And in fact, if I remember correctly, last I heard, Night Nurse was dating Doctor Strange. And of course, we even get to hear the words "Night Nurse" dropped. That's very cool. But I mean, she proves that even though she's not somebody with superpowers, she's a very caring person, a very smart person, very determined person. I mean, she's somebody who really, even though she is just an ordinary person, really does show that she can stand and stand tall in this superhero world, and that she really does have very significant things to contribute, and that's cool. I really like Claire a lot, and I can't wait to see some more of her. Other things. Um, I do have to mention I was a little bit skeptical when I heard that Method Man was going to be popping up in this series. But you know what? I got no complaints about that. That scene at the convenience store between him and Luke Cage and him and the robbers was hilarious. That Playland bit where the robber is like going, "Oh man, I'm such a big fan of yours," and Method Man's just like, "Dude, you're robbing the place, and you want to have a conversation with me?" And then he goes on to that radio show and does just comes up with this impromptu rap about Luke Cage, which I'm not really a rap guy. There are a few rap songs that I like, but in general, it's not my thing. This one though, I found myself liking it quite a bit. I'm not sure if Luke would like people referring to him as a thug, which he does at one point in the song. But you know what? I mean, it's rap. That's kind of just what people do. So I'll let that one slide. And Method Man does make this great observation, which is ultimately what the core of the series is about. Is like, here's a bulletproof black guy going out there standing up for what's right. Here's a black guy who doesn't have to be afraid of guns. And think about what a game changer that would be in America if all black people didn't have to be afraid of guns. And I don't mean in the sort of, you can pick up a motorcycle and throw it away. I mean, just like, you don't have to worry about getting shot, going about your life, trying to stand up for what's right. Okay, so that was kind of heavy. And I've been talking for about 25 minutes, so I think this is going to be a good place to wrap up. So, long and the short of it all, Luke Cage does have some flaws, but ultimately this is good stuff. And not only is it good stuff, I think in a lot of ways this is an important series. And I, for one, am extremely happy that black actors and other creators got the chance to come together, and put together something like this, and that so many people of all backgrounds out there have embraced it. Yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff going on out there in terms of race and intolerance and injustice and unfairness. But this is an example of how people from all backgrounds can share a love of things. And then that's one of the great things about comics, is that they appeal to people who are rich and who are poor, to people from the north, to the south, to the people of all backgrounds. And yes, comics have a very long list of sins, past and present, when it comes to race and diversity and all of that. But they are something that brings people together. And God knows that is something we desperately need in these times. So, with that, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi, and you can also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. Until next time, take care and have a good one.